Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hey Man, It's Okay. I'm Sky Bridges, and I'm joined by Ryan Heapy.
Hey guys, welcome. Good to be back.
Yeah, we're going to talk about something that's it kind of just came at us so fast, and that his rise to popularity is nothing short of meteoric. Like, it was just so fast. We're going to talk about Oliver Anthony and his music.
I guess he's the first songwriter to debut on the Billboard Hot 100 with no prior chart history in any form.
Yeah, that's pretty
Really saying
crazy.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, it means that his music really spoke to people. And, with platforms like Apple Music and Spotify and TikTok and YouTube, these guys are getting out there fairly quickly, it seems.
Yeah, he released his very first video, I believe, just about a year ago. And I think this one, in a matter of days, went to like the top 100. I just looked, he's to like fourth now. Casey Musgraves took the top spot. Oh, his YouTube video, I think, has somewhere around like 60 or 70 million.
Yeah, the one that he recorded in his backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. Well, I thought since Oliver Anthony was kind of a TikTok guy and kind of came forward on TikTok and that's where he grew, I would bring in my resident TikTok expert, my younger brother, Grant. Welcome to the show, Grant, again.
Hi, howdy guys. How's
What's up,
it going?
Grant? Good to have you.
Glad to be here. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be able to be on the show again. For those, again, Grant, my name's Grant O'Mara.
Yeah, tell us all
Oliver
about
Anthony.
it because, you're kind of at that generation where you're very like fluid with TikTok and fluent with TikTok and you kind of know how it all works. So if you could explain it to us old guys, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So Oliver Anthony is someone that I've been following for a little bit before this big boom of stuff. I saw one of his first videos. He has been writing songs since September last year. His song was called Long Gone, and that was in May of this year is when I first started introducing him. So I've been a couple months. But recently, when he went this big boom, his song came out, and I was like, all right, cool. This is a really inspirational song to today's world and how it works. Like, it speaks a lot of truth in so many different factors and ways. And it targets, like the working class, it targets the corrupt government and stuff like that. And so when it first hit, I was like, cool. And I started following it. It had a couple 100,000 likes and stuff. I was like, all right, cool. A couple of weeks go by, I'm listening to the song because, it influenced me, like just with how much truth. And I started seeing videos of people reacting to the song, giving their opinions, and and then it got to where it is today. And it's at a couple million views and a couple million likes, and constantly it's everywhere. Like, it's on top of Spotify, it's on top of Apple Store. Like, those are the main two that I run. I have friends who use Pandora. It's at the top of Pandora. Like, it's insane. And it's just one of those songs that I was not expecting to take storm like that.
Yeah, they actually used it as like the beginning question kind of topic for the first Republican primary debate, which sparked quite a bit of controversy. It obviously got his name out there a bit more, but he was not pleased actually with them using it. I don't think they asked for his permission. They kind of were setting the stage that these are some of the problems that Americans are facing today. And I think he came out the very next day and said, you people are part of the problem. And I really object to you using the video, because a lot of Republicans tried to like co-opt him and, kind of say he was one of theirs. And I think Democrats tried to as well. And, he kind of gave the finger to both of them and said, no, both you guys are the problem, which I thought was really admirable in some ways to do. That being the title, right? It's Richmond, north of Richmond, which really is the rich politician. So, Grant, what were some of the things that kind of spoke to you? And I'm glad you're here today, because I think it really is speaking to probably almost your generation, maybe more than anyone else.
I think the biggest part was about the working class and having low pay, working many hours but not getting paid for those hours. So I used to work for a bigger company, and they would ask you to do overtime, but they'd say, hey, it's not paid overtime. I'm sorry, you're going to work this many plus hours but not get paid for it, because we can do that. We're a high company. And when I decided to quit that job and go looking for more jobs, it was really hard to find work that was about the same pay. And it was really hard to look for jobs that were anything higher or lower, because a lot of them were minimum wage. And part of the song that's, it says the quote, the part of the song goes, "You're selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay." That was the biggest part. It's very true because you can work hours, long hours, but the pay is what, like here it's 15.74 is minimum wage, and
that doesn't buy you a whole lot.
No, it doesn't. It
And
really
Washington
doesn't.
State actually is one
Like,
of the higher minimum wage states. So imagine how little they get paid in other states
yeah,
too.
what I currently get paid, I still don't think is enough for living, like to live off of.
Not by
Especially like,
yourself.
again, Washington being one, yeah, especially Washington being the, one of the higher, what's that called? Higher
It's like more expensive. It's more
life of
expensive to live.
living.
Higher cost of living.
Yeah, that. Thank you. Yeah, even with that, it's kind of, I could see it as a struggle. Like, I'm very, very lucky to be
Yeah.
living with Sky. I'm very lucky to have that.
Lucky, cursed. I don't know. You could probably use both.
But yeah, but seeing like my friends struggle to live, like I have so many friends that, they live by themselves. I have friends in different states, that live by themselves. And I'm fortunate enough to not be in that position, but I am not. It's very unfortunate to have to watch
For
people go
sure.
through that and to live through, that low pay. And so that was the biggest part of the song that really hit me. And then, I think that's what really got me into that song.
We just did a video, I think last week or the week before, on another YouTuber who kind of had this viral video about the struggles young men are facing today. And I can see how a lot of young men your age, and I'm glad you're here because I probably have a bunch of questions and hopefully they're not too personal, but how someone like you would want to possibly, she was talking about this class of men called the hikikomori, who basically have kind of just dropped out of, it's like a 1.5 million young men in Japan who have basically just dropped out of society. Sounds like they're not working, maybe on welfare, and really like don't even leave their homes. They just have kind of become hermits and totally almost withdrawn from society. And I think this song kind of speaks to some of that, and the struggles of young men finding purpose, finding good work, dropping out of college more than ever. I don't know, have you experienced some of that? Have you seen it amongst your friends? And at the same time, your generation has some of the most alarming mental health problems that I think we've ever seen in the history, of society, really.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I've personally definitely experienced that where I just really don't want to do anything, especially when, you work those long hours. Well, you get home and you want to do nothing else. Like, even though you have your personal responsibilities you have to get done, you don't want to do anything because you're just so tired of because of how hard you have to work in order to make a living. I have seen that among my friends where, I don't see them online for months at a time because they're working their butts off to make money so that they can actually live. I have a buddy, he works for a factory and, he works 5-10 hour shifts a week. And it's so like, I don't see him, I only see him like, 2-3 times a week because he's working so hard, and it drives you into, depression. It really does it. Where I currently work for a security company, and as much as I love the company, I can definitely see it with how the shifts work. You're sitting for majority of the shift. We have these scans you have to do every hour. There's not a lot. There's anywhere from 5 to 14 scans. You do that, you go sit back in your car for about an hour. You really have nothing to do in that hour except for sit and watch, and it can drive you to the point like it kind of makes you feel like you're crazy. I sit in my car sometimes and I'm so overly paranoid because it's such a low, you just don't know what to do. Yeah, you run out of that energy. And then like I have my buddies, they go in depression. They like, cuz they're working their butts off and they don't have much to do. Like, I have a friend who works and goes to school. And school in itself already causes a lot of depression, anxiety because of the schedule you're on and you're getting grades for something that you're never really going to use again in life. But then on top of that, they also have to balance
Right.
work. And I think between those two things are some of the biggest things that are influential to like my generation's problem. And it also has to do with, people, whether they're left side, right side, they combating each other constantly. At this point, I don't think my generation knows what
I
to
think
do with
that's the
themselves.
point of what Oliver Anthony was trying to talk about, was that why are we talking about this side or that side when we really should just be one people, like supporting each other? Like, why do we all have to fight? Why do we all have to? You either have to either feast or famine. Why can't we all get along just good? And I think that this song is really going to maybe bring awareness to that. Grant, what are your peers saying about the song? What have you talked to about with some of your friends? Because I'm really interested to hear like some of the different sides that may be coming out for this song.
Well, a large majority of my friend group, they have agreed with the song, specifically, and like I've had friends tell me that they cried when they heard it because it rang that deep of a truth, especially like in like the TikTok world. The lyrics is, I gotta find them. Give me a second. I want to make sure I quote this exactly to what it is.
Well, while he's looking for that, Ryan, have any of your peers been talking about this song? Being in the therapy world?
Yeah, I don't, it's interesting. I think a couple of clients have. I think my clients are a bit older and in a different place or making more money. And so, it
Okay.
might not resonate the same way. But what's interesting, that Grant's saying is I was listening to Oliver's interview by Rogan, and
Yeah.
not only is, I think his authenticity comes out in the song, with his voice and the lyric, but Grant, he was talking exactly about his own struggles, working this kind of mindless job. And I guess it paid well, and he had a wife, and, on paper, it seemed like everything seemed okay. But yet he also had a ton of anxiety. He was depressed. He ended up, going to the emergency room, feeling like he was having a heart attack, and he was actually just having, not just having, but he was having a panic attack. And it wasn't until he really decided to lean into his music and also stop smoking weed, stop drinking, and he kind of turned his life over to God as well. And there's I think a lot of those things can obviously help your mental health and then finding a purpose. But, for these 10
That's what I think it comes down to. Yeah.
These 10 years before that, he was writing these songs and knew he had this talent, that he wasn't putting himself out there. The anxiety was too much. But yeah, he talks about being in the exact same place that you and a lot of your friends find yourselves. And like you said, it's not really like knowing who they are or what to do, or what direction maybe to head into.
Did you find those lyrics?
I did, and I have more to add to it. So the lyrics go, Lord, we got folks in the streets, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. But God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. So one of the biggest things that brings to me has to do with TikTok. So TikTok is based, you make your video and you get views. And TikTok has what they call an algorithm. And it's a mix and match between people who are like actual content creators, like Scott, he's a content creator. He posts his stuff, it gets like, 200, 300 views per video. But with this lyrics, if you're 5'3" and 300 pounds, you get millions of views instantly, because that's the demographic is that people are looking at right now. And it's one of the biggest things because, they get to have exactly as it says, obese milking welfare. So people thinking that, they can be, obese, get whatever they want. But then you have the people, who are working their butts off to, to make money for themselves and they're not getting what they want. People post their life stories and, it gets 200, 300 views because that's just how algorithm wants to work. And so I think those lines specifically speak really big to that. Yeah, and the next lines for it are young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground because all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that line actually jumped out at me also. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what sparks most of Ryan and I's conversations. This want to help end that stigma and the want to help others so that they want to stop putting themselves 6 feet under.
Without getting too political, the whole song, right, is about politicians, at least the title, right, the Richmond, north of Richmond. And I can't remember a time in my life where I've felt more gaslit by both sides. And, and this is going to kind of have to go, towards your vision of kind of what your generation's future looks like. And, we're seeing Biden's 80, almost, I don't know, I think he's 80. Obviously, there's cognitive decline going on. You have like Dianne Feinstein, who's our senator, who's 90 years old, and they're like, she's completely barely there. Just the other day, we saw what looked like another stroke from Mitch McConnell right on television. And yet we're told that these people have our best interests in mind when and this is both sides, right? This is the leader of the Republican Party. This is, one of the longest running senators of California, and one who's pulling the strings for them. But I guess it's really depressing and sort of heartbreaking to kind of see these things and then hear the media tell us that everything's all right and these people are fine and we're in great hands. And so I guess it's which is a big point of why this song resonated. It's hard to imagine a good future. I think for it's incredibly difficult to buy a home right now, more difficult than it's ever been. And while a state like yours, Washington, has $15 minimum wage, it costs almost $15 to buy a cheeseburger at a lot of places now. And so
I can concur.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and like the house, house prices here, like for a starter house, you're not paying less than 600,000. And then if you go somewhere else in the country and you want to buy 600,000, you can get land with a big house. It's insane. I mean, it's so crazy here.
But I guess, Grant, like, how do you stay optimistic? Are you trying to find purpose? Is what keeps you going, in the midst of sort of a bleak outlook?
I would definitely say it's really hard to stay optimistic. I had a moment recently where I was kind of feeling down in the dumps, and I had to look forward to like the short-term things because I don't really have a long-term thing. Because it's really hard to look at something that's long-term when I don't know what's going to happen in the short term. So I have little siblings, and I have 3 little siblings, and I love them dearly, and I'm going to go get to see them in October. And so right now, that is my goal right now. That is where I am pushing to keep going. That's my reason to keep going right now. And my long-term goal is like, I want to do something that will prove that I'm worth something to someone. At best, that's not, not the best goal, but it's a goal. And, staying optimistic with that goal, it's not easy, because you don't know what's going to happen. We have things going on around the world that might affect what happens here today. And so, you take every step as if, you're blind. You don't know what's next. You don't know what you'll be doing in 3 steps. You don't know what you'll be doing in 6 steps. You're just focused on what the next step's going to be.
Yeah, see, it's a lot different coming from the old, like, I'm, a little bit older. I'm pretty established in the world. I've, got a solid gig. Some of those things don't ring true with me, but definitely the mental health aspects of, all this definitely ring true. I can't say that. I mean, we struggle. Everyone struggles. I don't think anyone's, immune to struggle, but I think the older you get, the more lessons you learn on how to handle it and cope with it. I mean, I don't know if Ryan can speak to that also, but that's kind of how I feel about, when you run into conflict or issues.
Definitely. But I do think as you kind of go down by generation, and, I think I'm a Gen Xer maybe, and I think Sky, you're probably a millennial, and then Grant, I think you're Gen Z, right? And so we got, kind of three
I think that sounds right.
three
Yeah.
different
Unfortunately.
generations represented here. But I know when my parents were growing up, they could afford a home, with $100,000, and their wages weren't all that much more, all that much different than the wages are now. And, I guess I kind of think about another theme of the song in a lot of ways is like the decline of maybe the American dream. And I think just like as like the boomers, had this great time of prosperity, how that's sort of, been chipped away further and further. And, when I think I was growing up, there were a handful of great jobs. We had to go through the housing crisis of '08, which was, really disastrous. And then you see like
Yeah.
Wall Street get bailed out, and so all these little things, that kind of have really chipped away at our society, I think. Yeah, just make it harder and harder for younger generations to find purpose, to find good jobs, to find worth, like you said. And I think your goal is a worthy. I think it's great to find something that gives you that sense of worth. I think that goes a long way to feeling fulfilled.
Yeah, talking about having that sense of worth and finding that purpose. If we're let's go back to the song here. What he said was right before he released that song, he prayed to God and said, God, if you can just help me, get more secure in life, I promise I'm going to turn my life towards you. And like overnight, he just became a success. He was a heavy drinker, a heavy weed user, it sounded like. And then he gave that all up and it turned his life around because it helped him find purpose. Do you think that that's something that we're missing today, is a sense of purpose?
Absolutely. I was actually reading this. It's a pretty famous novel. It's kind of a classic, Man's Search for Meaning. It's by this psychiatrist that went through. I think I might have talked about it already on here, but it's by a psychiatrist who kind of was sharing his thoughts on kind of the human psyche while he was going through Nazi Germany, and he was in concentration camps, and really seeing humanity at its lowest. And one of the things he opens the book with is that what really creates success and happiness is living for a greater purpose, something greater than ourselves, and then listening kind of to our consciousness, pull us along in that direction and follow that. And that will bring us success and true happiness. And so, yeah, I think the sort of the absence of faith, in a lot of ways, I think has really hurt a lot of people's purpose. And I can understand that, right? The churches have not, over the last couple decades, have done some pretty terrible things. And so a lot of people have been turned away from religion and faith. But, kind of going back to that quote by Viktor Frankl, a faith often gives us that greater purpose. And then it often gives us kind of that path. And you saw with Oliver Anthony that he, sort of turned his life over to God and then stopped drinking and smoking and working hard. And all these, wonderful things just, happened to him. So, or all, they all seem to come together in a beautiful way. But I don't know. Yeah, I think we passed a point somewhere in the last couple of years where there are less people attending church than there are attending. And
Absolutely.
so yeah, I don't know the validity of this study. I definitely heard this somewhere, but that the greatest common denominator in someone's level of resilience is their level of spirituality and their like connection to either God, the source, whoever you believe in. But yeah, because it gives us, it can often give us a way to let go of some of our anxieties, to sort of give us faith that there's a reason for us being here. It does give us that resilience. I think often if we, believe that what we're doing is in service to some sort of higher power. I am curious, kind of Sky, as you are sort of transitioning, I don't know what you'd like to call it. Yeah, I don't want to speak for you, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk on it. So, listening to what you were saying, where you were talking about, the youth are kind of turning against religion. And I think that's true. I find that happening more and more. It seems for me, I think growing up, I feel like I was always told how to believe and why I should believe. But until I really took grasp of that myself and took my own accountability and found my own relationship with God, I didn't really get it at the time. And I feel like after finding that and finding that relationship and connection to, the greater being, I feel like my life has taken a turn for the better once I found my purpose. So, I mean, I can find that rings true for me, especially after I started going through my own therapy and figuring out what my brain needed for purpose. That's how I found this mental health community. That's how I found the growth and the positivity and that things could change. And everyone who's listened to my story knows how much that's changed my life and changed my perspective on things and how much calmer it's made me. So I think that it's not just about religion. It's not just about what you believe. It's about how you believe and if you believe it for yourself.
It's that actual connection, I think, that that to something deeper, something greater, right?
Oh no, I didn't have anything. I was
Well, Grant, do you have any belief system? Are you, some of your friends around you, do they believe in anything, or are you kind of seeing a more atheistic culture?
I would say I see a lot of more in atheistic culture, but then I have those few friends who are, it's called agnostic. So in the belief of some kind of higher being, but without putting a name to it. Because, I have friends who believe, there can't be a name. Like I had a conversation with someone last night about religion, and they were Muslim. And so they were giving me their view on it. And in Muslim, they have what's called the 99 names. Because in order to have the belief in something, you're going to have to put a name to it so you can refer to it. And the 99 names basically gives 99 names, and from those names, you can put something to Allah and to get your own image. And so it was a very eye-opening thing to me to hear about that. I was like, oh, that's very true. You get to have a name of something, a reference of something, so that you can put a picture to it, so that you have that belief in something.
And so, what do you believe?
I would say I'm almost on the side of agnostic. I believe there's a higher being, but I don't want to put an exact something to it yet, because I'm still on that path of learning and figuring out what I want for my being to be.
Yeah.
The thing
How about you,
to guide
Ryan?
you.
The same question can go to you too, though.
I am all over the damn
Yeah.
place with my beliefs. I like to almost believe in every religion and everyone's source, higher power. I also think there's something to Hebrew and like Christian mysticism. I think there's when I started my practice, I did not believe in astrology or zodiac or anything like that. And the longer I've kind of kept working and the more and more themes that I actually see, you read star charts or look at a horoscope of what's going on in the world. I actually often see that really playing out with a lot of my clients, and I'll see a lot of similarities each week that people are working through. Most notably, like the last couple of weeks, everybody that I've been working with has been like very scattered and kind of just not feeling very grounded. And then a few weeks before that, everybody was going through some sort of relational issues. And so it's just interesting kind of themes I'll see. I think right before that, I noticed like everybody, was sort of in this like apathetic, lethargic, almost like depressive sort of states. So, yeah, I take a little something from almost every faith out there, and whether that's Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, or astrology. I think there's a little something to everything there. And I think there's great teachings in just about everything.
Oh, yeah. I can agree. I mean, there are definitely positive teachings everywhere. It's funny you talk about religious searching and agreeing with, religious groups, because Rainn Wilson made a comment on this song. He actually sent out a tweet or an X or, whatever they're calling it these days, about how he wouldn't talk about the EBT cards not paying for your fudgy packets or whatever it was. He said, I would talk about the billionaires and how your money is disgusting. It's funny because Rainn Wilson is famously known for being of the Baha'i faith, which I find pretty intriguing and interesting. Do you know much about that faith at all?
I used to, and I don't much. It's escaping my memory. Do you? Do you have some cliff notes?
So when I was growing up, I had an aunt and uncle who were of the Baha'i faith also. The way my parents explained it is the way I'll always remember it. And they say they kind of take a little bit of every religion, the good of every religion, and don't take any of the bad. So it sounds like there's a wide variety of things that they could believe in. But I think it's funny that religion playing into this is kind of the groups that are sort of talking about all of this and talking about spirituality. And, there's got to be something to it. You're talking about themes, you're talking about order. Here it is again.
I mean, yeah. I mean, religion is one of the biggest things in people's purpose.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that have happened for religious purposes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it can give us direction, right? It can give us a set of values. It can give us a way of living. There is a lot of great teachings, I think, in almost all of the different scriptures, from each of the major faiths. At the same time, I was in a sort of fundamental Pentecostal church when I was around 20 to 21 years old. And there were a lot of things going on in that church that didn't sit right with me. And, I could see that it was starting to get driven by money. I could see that there was, sort of some infidelity and, some really inappropriate relationships that were going on. And, really, I was asking a lot of questions. I'm, always been a question asker. And I asked one too many, and they asked me to leave, as a matter of fact. Unfortunately, a lot of these religions are also run by men who are, as flawed, men and women, but just, as flawed as everyone else. And so I think that's the real tragedy, maybe, that's sort of occurred with religion over the last couple decades. All the scandals in the Catholic Church with priests, you see in some of these like Christian mega churches, and there's scandals there too. And anytime anybody gets a good amount of power whether that's just, over a congregation or on a larger scale, it often corrupts people. And so, but I also think that we might be sort of heading into a time, at least I'm finding this with a lot of my friends and people I follow, kind of getting away from traditional religions, but really trying to deepen their spirituality in a lot of other ways. And so, I'm feeling almost like there is some sort of return, maybe, to faith or to spirituality after, kind of what's seemed like a mass exodus over the last 30, 40 years.
And that's something that I've always said is I'm not opposed to, going back at some point, but I want to see some changes in some things. I want to see things grow. I want to see things change. I want to see people adapt to being more open-minded about things. And right now it's just not something that's in the cards. And that's hard because, you take these things that you were taught fundamentally as a child and put them into practice in today's world. And it's kind of hard to cope. And maybe some of these people who don't really know how to make their own decisions or don't know how to overcome adversity are some of the people who were kind of told not to trust in themselves, but to trust in the power of prayer. And will solve everything. I believe prayer will solve things, but I think you need to work towards those acts in order to help solve it. And I think too many people play the victim, unfortunately.
Sky, I think you kind of bring something up there. And I think it's sort of that balance or that lack of balance that I see kind of can often contribute to not the best mental health, is either when people are far too self-absorbed and only thinking about what's the next pleasurable thing that I'm looking for, or just kind of chasing this moment to moment feeling of happiness. And then also on the other side of the spectrum, where there's maybe no accountability and everything, can be laid at the hands of God without having any agency or feeling empowered and actually taking control of some of your actions. And so the real harmony seems to be somewhere in the middle, and maybe going back to that quote of living for something greater than ourselves. And I guess that's what I've always found has given me the most fulfillment, purpose, long-term happiness, is that we all don't feel great day by day. There's some days we feel better than others, right? But, when I think we're working towards something bigger almost all the time, or building mastery in something, sort of where we're heading in our direction, and it gives us a goal that we're constantly kind of striving for. I know I'm so blessed in what I get to do here that, every day I kind of feel like I'm in service, in some way or another.
Yeah, I feel that same way because I feel like the more I put out into the universe that, I want to be involved with mental health things, and I want to be involved with these organizations that are doing so good for suicide awareness and mental health awareness and whatever it is, I feel like I'm finally seeing these things come to fruition and things happening that are going to help me get connected more to this community. And I feel like there was a moment in time where I said to myself that I needed to stop working against the wind and I need to start flying in the wind. And I feel like since I've done that and since I've relied more on the universe, God, whatever it is you call it, the happier I've been and the easier life has been. Like as soon as I stopped fighting against it, doors started opening, and it was crazy. So there's got to be something to that.
In the modality that's my favorite, which is DBT over here, dialectical behavioral therapy. It's my absolute favorite kind of form of therapy, and it's this massive set of skills. Anyways, one of the skin there is being willing versus willful, and not trying to always force reality to bend to our will, which often just leaves us disappointed. And is there a way to be more willing and more accepting of maybe our circumstances, which I think also adds to gratitude. And I think gratitude is one of the greatest kind of concepts there are when it comes to day-to-day happiness and feeling fulfilled. When we're a little more accepting, we're more grateful, kind of like you said, Sky, when we kind of can allow and be okay with maybe some of the circumstances and then work from there.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I think, we could talk, I feel like we could talk about this forever. There's just so many aspects of, whether it's religion, whether it's mental health, whether it's poor man versus the rich man, Democrats versus Republicans. I feel like no matter what, there's things to talk about, and there's kind of views from each and every single side. But all I can say is the proof's in the pudding with Oliver Anthony, finding that purpose, and he just overnight blew up. Just insane.
Yeah, he targeted like 3 or 4 different things that were like four of the biggest things, and just it's nuts.
And I think the last piece that so many people maybe aren't talking about, at least that I'm not hearing a lot, is just how great of a song it is too. Like that voice he's got,
absolutely.
I think that just adds to the weight of the lyrics. Is you feel that pain in when he's singing it, and I think that's something that resonates in all of us. Is we're familiar with that pain.
And from a technical standpoint, it sounds like he's never had any professional training, which is just amazing to me. This is just his voice. And so from like a technical standpoint, what he's hearing is that, he's not projecting right, or he's not turning his head the right way when he's finishing this. Like, he's just like, whatever. He's like, this is my voice and this is how I sound. And people seem to be responding to that. The more natural, untrained, just like, it's just such a raw, emotional song, which is pretty amazing. Any final thoughts from either of you guys on this topic?
Grant, I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I don't have anything else for the topic. We hit a lot of its main points.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So,
but yeah, I'm glad you were able to join us today before you had to run to work.
Yeah, I'm very glad to be here and are honored to be able to give my opinion.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Well,
that was a fun discussion there, Sky.
Yeah. It was really great. I really enjoyed it. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. Thank you, Hey Man, It's Okay fans, for supporting us and viewing us. And if this is your first time on YouTube watching us, thanks for coming. Thanks for looking at our, make sure to check out our TikTok. Make sure to check out our YouTube channel. Check out our website, heymanitsokay.com. And it's just okay, not OKAY. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Sky, and it's okay to not be okay.
I'm Ryan. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.